Welcome to the Local Content Studio, an AI-generated podcast sponsored by newmedialocal.com, an AI-powered digital media agency.
Welcome to the Local Content Studio. I'm Lorita Marie Kimble, founder of New Media Local. Today, I want to talk about content, but not in the usual you need to post more kind of way. That advice is technically true for a lot of law firms, but it isn't very helpful. Most immigration and civil rights attorneys I know are not sitting around with extra time wondering how to fill it. They're dealing with clients, deadlines, hearings, filings, phone calls, family emergencies, policy questions, community concerns, and all the emotional weight that comes with this kind of work. So when someone says you need to create more content, it can sound like they are asking you to add another unpaid job to an already full week. I don't think that's the right starting point. The better question is not, how do I make time to become a content creator? The better question is, how do I stop losing the useful explanations I'm already giving every week? The content is already in the conversation. When I say your voice is the asset, I don't mean your brand voice in the polished marketing sense. I mean the way you explain something when a person is sitting across from you and they're scared, confused, angry, embarrassed, or unsure whether they even have a legal issue. That version of you is usually much more useful than the version that sits down to write a post from scratch. In a real conversation, you know what to say. You hear the question underneath the question. You know when someone is repeating something they found online that doesn't apply to their situation. You know when a person is focused on the wrong detail because they don't understand the bigger issue yet. That's valuable. And most of the time, none of it gets captured. It happens in a consultation, on a call, at a community event, in a meeting, maybe even in a quick conversation after a workshop. Then it disappears. Later, when you need a blog post or a LinkedIn update, you stare at a blank page and think, I don't know what to write. But you did know. You knew on Tuesday at 2:15 when you explained the same misconception for the third time that week. That's where the content was. Why generic legal content misses the point? A lot of legal content is written as if the reader is calmly researching a topic. Sometimes they are, but in immigration and civil rights work, people are often not calm when they start searching. Someone may have received a notice they don't understand. Someone may be worried about a family member. Someone may be trying to figure out whether what happened at work, at school, during a traffic stop, or inside a government office was just unfair or something more than that. So if your content sounds like a textbook summary, it might be accurate, but it may not meet the person where they are. That doesn't mean you need to be emotional or dramatic. Actually, I think the opposite is usually better. People need steady information, they need context, they need someone to help them slow down enough to understand the next right question. The problem with generic content is that it explains the topic without showing how you think. And when someone is deciding whether to contact an attorney, how you think matters. They want to feel that you're careful. They want to feel that you understand the real world side of the issue. They want to know that you can explain something complicated without making them feel small. That kind of trust doesn't come from a perfect paragraph. It comes from the sense that a real person with real judgment is behind the words. A better way to find ideas. If you've ever sat down and tried to come up with content, you already know how awkward that feels. It turns a practical thing into a creative performance. A much easier place to start is with what annoyed you, concerned you, surprised you, or kept coming up during the week. For an immigration attorney, maybe the theme was delay. People waited too long because they were afraid to ask for help, and now the options are more complicated. For a civil rights attorney, maybe the pattern was documentation. People experienced something troubling, but by the time they started writing things down, the timeline had become blurry. Those aren't just case management issues, they're public education opportunities. You're not sharing private facts. You're not giving legal advice to strangers on the internet. You're taking a pattern you see in your work and explaining why it matters. That's a very different kind of content than 3 reasons to hire our firm. It's also more useful. What a 5-minute voice note can do. Here's a practice that works because it doesn't require you to become a writer. At the end of the week, take out your phone and record a 5-minute voice note. Don't script it. Don't worry about whether it sounds good. Just talk through one thing you found yourself explaining more than once. You might start with a sentence like, something that came up a few times this week was, then keep going. Maybe you explain why a deadline matters. Maybe you talk about why people should be careful with information they get from friends or online groups. Maybe you clarify what documentation can and cannot do. Maybe you explain why a situation that feels urgent still needs to be approached carefully. That voice note becomes the source material. From there, someone can help shape it into a post, an article, a short video script, a newsletter section, or a website FAQ. AI can help with that shaping too, as long as the original thinking comes from you and the final version is reviewed with care. The point isn't to automate your expertise. The point is to stop letting your best explanations vanish. Where AI fits without making things weird. AI can be useful, but it's not magic, and it's definitely not a substitute for legal judgment. If you ask it to write generic legal content, you'll probably get generic legal content. It may sound smooth, but smooth is not the same as trustworthy. A better use is to give it something real to work with: a rough transcript from a voice note, a few bullet points from a consultation theme, a plain English explanation you already gave in a workshop, a list of misconceptions you keep hearing from potential clients. Now, the tool has material with texture. It can help organize your thoughts. It can suggest a cleaner structure. It can turn a long explanation into shorter pieces for different platforms. But for attorneys, the review process isn't a final polish. It's part of the ethics of the work. You decide what's accurate. You decide what's too broad. You decide what needs a disclaimer, what needs to be softened, and what shouldn't be said publicly at all. That boundary keeps the content useful without letting the tool take over. Visibility does not have to feel like performance. One reason attorneys resist content is that online visibility has gotten a bad reputation. And honestly, some of that reputation is deserved. A lot of what passes for marketing is too loud, too simplified, too personal, or too eager to turn every serious issue into a hook. That doesn't fit immigration and civil rights work. The goal isn't to become a personality online. The goal is to make your thinking easier to find. There's a quiet kind of visibility that works well for serious practices. A post that explains a common misconception, a short article that helps someone prepare for a consultation, a video that walks through what to document after an incident, a newsletter note that puts a recent issue into context without trying to scare people. That kind of content doesn't cheapen the work, it supports it. It gives potential clients a better understanding of when to seek help. It gives referral partners something concrete to share. It gives community organizations a clearer sense of your perspective. And over time, it builds familiarity in a way that feels earned. The real cost of staying quiet. I want to be careful here because I'm not saying every attorney needs to publish constantly. That's not realistic, and it's not always necessary. But there's a cost when your public presence doesn't reflect the quality of your work. Someone may be looking for exactly the kind of help you provide, but they can't tell from your website or your social content that you're the right person to call. A referral partner may respect you but have nothing easy to send when someone asks, "Can you tell me more about them?" A potential client may choose another firm simply because that firm made the issue easier to understand first. That doesn't mean the other attorney is better, it means their clarity was easier to find. This is why content matters. Not because every post is going to bring in a client. That's not how trust usually works. Content matters because it gives people repeated chances to understand your thinking before they ever reach out. If this is something you've been struggling with, especially if you know your public content doesn't really reflect the depth of your work, I want you to visit authorityproof.ai. That's authorityproof.ai. It's built around a simple idea: your spoken insight can become useful content without forcing you to start from a blank page every week. For immigration and civil rights attorneys, that means taking the explanations you're already giving and shaping them into articles, posts, newsletters, FAQs, or talking points that sound grounded, careful, and human. Not influencer content, not generic AI content, just a better way to make your expertise easier to find. Again, visit authorityproof.ai to learn more. That's it for this episode of the Local Content Studio. I'm Lorita Marie Kimble, founder of New Media Local. Before you move on with your day, think about one thing you explained this week that more people probably need to understand. Not a whole campaign, not a polished article, just one explanation. Record it while it is still fresh. That may be the start of your next best piece of content. And more importantly, it may be the thing that helps someone feel clear enough to take the next right step.